Epic VAC bottles of history. EGO versus Makita. Begin.
Okay, well that was a little fun. Hopefully you are familiar with it's from Epic Rap Battles of History, which is a great channel. A lot of great matchups, particularly like the Tolkien versus George R.R. Martin. Thought that was hilarious. But today I want to do the video that I've been wanting to do ever since I got the EGO Shopvac, and that is a comparison versus the EGO Shopvac versus the Makita Shopvac that I reviewed previously, one of my first videos actually. I think there's a lot of really interesting matchups here, and I think it's going to be fun to go through one by one and kind of award points one way or the other. Let's do it. Okay, so we'll probably go and put these head to head. Well, not probably, we will, as far as suction and all that. But I think there's a lot of comparisons we can make just by visually inspecting both Shopvacs. And I'm going to start with the cords. So with the EGO cord, you have approximately, I believe, 6-foot cord, maybe a little longer than that. But you can see it's very solid construction. It's kind of got this green fleck to it. It's a wider diameter hose, and it's heavier. It's just physically heavier. With the Makita, you have a much longer cord, and I will say much more flexible. So it's, I would say it's probably close to 10-foot cord. Maybe I'll try to measure these and confirm. And it's maybe not as hard duty. You can squish the hose, but it's much more flexible and it's lighter. And so I would say first point I would have to give to Makita because it's just easier to work with their cord. However, there's, that I'm going to caveat that and say that this is a much more heavy duty cord, wider diameter, so it's easier to suck up big things without it getting clogged. This can get clogged. I mean, all Shopvacs can get clogged, but this one's going to get it's more easily clogged just because it's a much smaller diameter. Just to demonstrate what I mean by this, you can definitely squeeze this Makita cord very easily. Whereas with the EGO one, like I'm squeezing pretty hard, and I'm not squeezing. I'm not saying it's impossible. You could step on it, but it's just much stronger and sturdier. But it's also heavier. I'll talk next about their mobility. I will say they're both about the same in practical use. They both wheel pretty smoothly, certainly on concrete ground. The Makita has 4 casters that are free motion in all directions. They're all that plastic though caster, so I wouldn't say overly impressed, but it's kind of like similar to office chairs. It kind of flows like that. It is because of its vertical size, it's a little top heavy. I mean, they're all top heavy. It can tip. It doesn't happen too often, but it can, particularly if you catch one wheel on something, it's likely to tip. The other thing is, as you turn this around and move it, the hose mechanism is a screw-in model, where you just screw it in until it's tight. Well, it's easy to unscrew that as you are guiding the thing around, so it can get loose over time, not like all the time, but like over a period of several months. One day you'll be moving around and the whole thing comes disconnected. Otherwise, very good mobility for the Makita. The EGO, it's almost the same story, although they went about it in a different way. So the Makita, or the EGO, is pretty easy to move. It's noticeably heavier, right, than the Makita. We'll talk about weight in a little bit, but it's pretty easy to move. But you'll notice the EGO has fixed, rigid wheels in the back, so it requires the whole thing to pivot and then go in the direction you're going. But these wheels are gigantic in comparison. So they roll really easy. The front casters are even a little bit bigger than the Makita, and those are the free wheel, free motion, free range ones. So it actually is pretty easy to haul or to guide around. But you're going to notice this one's heavier. It's just more of a pulling action than the Makita. So on that, I'd have to say it's a tie. They're both pretty easy to move around on their wheels. Next, we're going to talk about onboard storage. I went over this recently with the EGO. I actually missed some things when I did my review of it, and that is, thanks for some helpful viewers to point this out, EGO has integrated some tube storage underneath the Shopvac, and that is pretty clever. In fact, it was so well hidden that I didn't realize it was there. So I have to revise some of my comments and say EGO thought that through a lot better than I thought they did. That's pretty awesome, honestly. I'm still gonna ding them on some other things, but that is very cool. And then of course you've got these hooks on the top for your cord, which is okay. It's okay. That's all right. Won't complain about it too much. But the really bad thing is as far as these little accessory tools that they have here. For storage, they want to put them up here. Well, the problem with that is this groove is not very deep, so they don't sit in there very well. And it is so, I mean, it's just a matter of seconds, if not minutes, before this gets knocked either by the cord or by something else and they fall off. So there is absolutely no actual storage for the accessories. They have some storage here for the little ones, which is great, but not for the more commonly used crevice tool and the floor nozzle. So that's not good at all. On the Makita, it's, well, it's not even as good as that, right? So on the back, you've got this storage for the crevice tools. They are much deeper, and so they sit in there a lot better. That's a lot less likely that it's going to fall out. It's going to stay in there. But now, look, this is where they want you to wind the cord, and now those tools, if you put them there, are kind of in the way of you putting in the cord. So if you take this out, it would wrap a little easier and sit in there better, but now you don't really have a place to put your crevice tool. So that's not great either. And of course, they don't have any intended storage for you know, your wand, or you know, the tubes that don't come with this as a kit anyway. So not almost like they didn't even try to do much in the way of storage for your hose, nozzles, and tubes. The other thing is this just kind of like slides on and off. It stays in there most of the time, but it just kind of sits in there and it's not great at it. So I would have to say definitely awarding a win to EGO on this one, but there's still improvement that could be made on the EGO. Next category we're going to talk about is included accessories. This one will be really easy. EGO wins. They include all of the accessories: crevice tool, floor nozzle, tubes, and plus a lot of little kind of more, I don't know what the right word, smaller accessories. The Makita comes with nothing, absolutely nothing. The only thing they give you is the hose and I believe this crevice tool, and that is it. So no tubes, no different floor nozzles, no tips, nothing. It's basically, you're going to have to find your own selection if you want to do anything more than what they give you. So not even close. EGO wins this one hands down. Next, we're going to talk about capacity. You can obviously see one is much bigger than the other, and that's because this is a 9-gallon and this is a 4-gallon. And I've talked about this before. 4-gallon is an interesting spot in that it's still pretty small. A 4-gallon is easy to fill up, particularly if you're doing liquid, suction, or even just general purpose debris. You're going to fill this one up so much faster than the 9-gallon. The flip side is this is lighter, obviously, than this one, particularly when you don't have batteries in them. So it's going to be, what is your intended purpose? Is 4-gallon enough for you, or do you need more capacity? Then maybe the 9-gallon makes sense. So I can't really award one over the other because they're just completely different size. Makita doesn't make other models that come in a larger size, and EGO only makes the one. So it's a little tricky to say one versus the other. But if you need more capacity, then obviously the 9-gallon is going to be the way to go. If you don't care as much about capacity and prefer to focus on mobility and ease of use, then the 4-gallon is your option. So I'm just going to call this a tie because it's just completely different. It's not like a measurement of power or something. It's just a measurement of capacity. Okay, next up is runtime. I'm not going to run these head to head. I don't need to. I've measured them separately, and it's not going to be a contest. The EGO blows away the Makita. It's just, like I said, it's a complete runaway. So the EGO or the Makita uses 2 batteries because the Makita uses 1 battery at a time and then switches over. So it's not like it's drawing equally from both batteries. But even with 2 5 amp hour batteries for 10 amp hour total, the Makita is going to poop out long before the EGO with a equivalent battery I use. Runtime is so much higher that it's not it's just not negligible. I'll put the numbers down so you can see them. But EGO is going to give you way more runtime even at the highest suction versus the Makita, and it's just not a contest. Makita has a lot of room to improve there. They're certainly working on improving their batteries, but that's something that needs to be addressed. Next, we're going to talk about functional design. This one's a little more difficult to award a certain winner to, because there's a couple of features I like really good about both models. One is I really love this little remote that the EGO has, because you can put it on the hose, and it's very easy to use the buttons to turn on and off the vacuum, particularly if you're not close to it, which with this included cable, you're going to be pretty close to it because it's not that long. But if you had a longer one, or just, it's not easy for you to reach back to it, this gives you some flexibility, which is awesome. On the Makita, it has this awesome kickstand, kick button, which is so easy to touch and hit, with your foot, however you can reach it and turn it on. It kind of serves the same purpose. Between the two, I would love to have both, I guess is what I'd love to have. Love to have a kick start button and also the remote, because I think that both would be awesome. So I'm going to give it a tie, although this clearly takes more engineering, more thought, more process. So EGO has definitely done a better job with it, integrating that in. This was maybe simpler, but it's very, very useful. So I don't want to undercount that. And then in terms of the other controls, I think a nozzle or a switch between your power levels is great. I think it's stupid that EGO has a speed 1 and 2 and then a turbo. I think that's dumb. So I don't like that at all. And I wish they would do away with that completely and just say there's 3 speeds. Turbo happens to be speed 3. And also, a button's fine. I kind of like this because you can leave it in that mode. So anytime you turn off the Makita and turn it back on, if you still got this switch to a high power, it's always going to be in high power. I think that's better than buttons on the EGO. So point is the same. The other thing, this has AWS, where it automatically wireless start. So with certain tools, if you get the chip, which is another $100, and put it in the tool, you can use this to auto wirelessly kick on when you're using the tool, like a chop saw or maybe a sander or whatever. That's cool. It's expensive. It is okay. The biggest flaw with that is that you have to maybe not pair it, but you have to power it on each time that you use it. So if you're using it, every day and you just start your day turning that on, that's great. But if you're like a homeowner and you just come out occasionally, it's not great because you kind of have to do that. If you forget to do that step, and then you got to do it, and then it's like, it's just been as easy to kick this kickstand on whenever I need to. So even though I have it with my miter saw, for example, the AWS, I never use it. I always just kick this on when I start my cut and kick it off when I don't. So this is like a nice conceptual advantage. In practical use as a handyman at home, not really that great. So to give an award on the two, I'm really torn. I'm almost going to call this a tie, because simplicity sometimes is better than over-engineering. So again, I wish it was a little bit of both. Okay, it's time to get to the fun stuff. So we talked all about the kind of like the physical features of the Shopvacs. Now we want to get to their performance, which is the suction test. And that's going to be a lot of fun. So let's get into that right now. I've got 2 4 amp hour batteries fully charged up and ready to go for the Makita. And I've got a fully charged up 12 amp hour battery for the EGO. Let's do some suction tests. Okay, I've assembled some decent sized leaves here and 1 good sized pine cone. And I want to show the difference that the diameter of the hose, I think, makes with the Shopvac. So I'm going to start with the Makita. I'm going to take this off so I have just the hose. You can see how it's starting to get caught. And you can already see what's going on with that. EGO next. I don't know that it will necessarily be better, but let's try it. Wow, that took that down. So in both cases, they do get stuck. And with the EGO, you've got this little clear out chamber, which can be helpful. Just because I'm curious, I want to see if it'll suck up this pine cone. Woo! That was awesome. Okay, here I have the very same box that I used in the EGO overview that I picked up with the EGO hose doing the suction. I'm going to do the same test with the Makita and see how it does. We're going to go max suction and see from there, okay? Max suction. All right. It did not get it up. I had hoped. I'm going to take out this fitting. This fitting just makes it adapt a little easier to some of the other tools, and I'm just going to try this part of the hose, see if that makes a difference. There we go. That does make a big difference. Pick that up pretty good. So they both have the capability definitely of picking up that box, because the EGO did it as well, and I'll just show that real. There we go. So seeing it suck up that pine cone was, I mean, it's just, you probably heard on the camera, I don't know how well the sound came through, it was just like, doof, like it was shooting through a cannon or something, but it was just sucking it right through that hose. So I'd say both of the VACs have plenty of power. The performance in your cleanup, like if you're doing leaves, for example, the EGO is going to do a lot better, mostly because it has a wider diameter hose on it. The Makita is going to do just fine, but the smaller hose means it's more prone to getting jammed and clogged when you're sucking up larger things like leaves from your garage. It's just, I would say that's just physical constraints. It's not really a suction problem or a VAC problem. You could look at getting a wider diameter hose for your Makita, but that's not what it comes with. Okay, so if we talk in terms of value and cost, obviously I have to award the point to EGO here, because Makita only sells, well, I bought both items, let's put it this way, I bought both Shopvacs as a bare tool, not as a combo kit. And as a bare tool, the EGO is much more affordable than the Makita Shopvac is as a bare tool. And so if you've already got the batteries, if you're just looking at your total cost spend, EGO is going to be much more affordable, and you get a lot more with it in terms of accessories and everything. The Makita, I had to go buy my own set of tubes and a floor nozzle and all that, which was an additional cost. But we'll say that is a better ergonomic telescoping wand than what's included with the EGO, but the point is EGO includes that rather than making you buy it separately. So value, got to award a point to EGO on that. Okay, I think that's going to wrap up today's session. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I know I enjoyed making it. I think both VACs are really good. I strongly recommend either one, but the EGO is just better.